So as you guys can tell, I'm still in the process of moving, and I've got this kind of makeshift audio setup here as well. Hopefully everything looks and sounds good, but I am still keeping up to date on what's happening with video games. And one of the stories that came out this week, and one thing that I really wanted to talk to you guys about, because I have some experience in this and I have some thoughts and opinions that I think people should be interested in listening to, has to do with PlayStation Plus Premium, specifically where Ben Studios had announced on May the 19th that trophies would be added to Siphon Filter when it comes to the all-new PlayStation Plus later this month. Now, this is something that obviously has never happened before, and this is pretty much a landmark thing for Sony, where we're starting to see PS1 games getting trophies added to their old games. And this is something that I predicted months and months ago that I thought would happen, and it has. And really it has to do with the way that Sony operates. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's kind of talk about what has actually transpired here and what to expect. So this particular story came out from Game Rant. Even though there's many different websites had report on this, this is the one that I want to talk about. Now, if we take a close look, it says here, Sony will soon be making a host of classic PlayStation 1 games available to play on the PS4 and PS5, primarily through the PlayStation Plus revamp. Some of the games will be available for individual purchase. They will be available to PlayStation Plus subscribers that decide to upgrade to the new PS Plus Premium tier when it launches on June the 13th. And it goes on to say here, better yet, classic games will come with some new bells and whistles that weren't available in their original release. And essentially what they're talking about is having save states and rewind features, which is something that is pretty common when we talk about an online service that is running emulation. For example, the Nintendo Switch Online has rewind features added to their games, although I don't think it actually is supported for the Nintendo 64 stuff. But having save states and rewind is a pretty common thing. But what's interesting, again, is the PlayStation Plus Premium has been confirmed to have trophy support, but it could be a sign that more of them will incorporate trophies. So I think, and this is just me speculating, but I think every single game that's on this service that you can download will have trophies in them. Now, I'm only speculating. I don't know if that's actually true, but I believe that any of the classic games that you can download should support trophies, and it will remain to be seen if that actually is the case. But if Ben is coming out and offering trophies on Siphon Filter, then I would expect games like Ape Escape and the other games that have been added to that initial list of games will also support trophies. And the reason has to do with something that I've said previously when we talked about this particular service. Back then it was called Project Spartacus. But essentially, Sony requires any game that needs to be submitted to be certified, and that certification process requires trophies to be installed with those games. Now, let's kind of stop for a sec and talk about that for a minute. So we said that the game, when it's submitted to Sony, has to have a trophy pack assigned to it, otherwise it cannot pass certification. Now, people are probably wondering, well, Siphon Filter is a game that runs via emulation, so why does it need trophies? Well, that is a good question. What I suspect is happening here is that all the games that are being curated through the PlayStation Plus Premium, all the classic games, most likely will have some changes. And what I mean changes, I'm not specifically talking about the game itself. What I'm talking about is potentially some changes to the UI. Maybe there's some audio tracks that have been replaced. Essentially what I'm talking about is the game itself has been rebuilt and is being resubmitted with some minor changes to make sure that it not only from a legal standpoint is good to go on the PlayStation Plus Premium service, but also has those additional features that are required by Sony when you publish a game for certification, including things like trophies. Now, people are probably wondering, well, what about Xbox? Why doesn't OG Xbox games have achievements on them? Well, that's a good question, but I think the difference is, and look, this is something that someone can potentially clarify if this information is incorrect, but I have a feeling that I am right about this. When it comes to backward compatibility, I've heard multiple times from people like Jason Ronald, for example, that Microsoft themselves handle the emulation itself. They built the emulator. They are the ones that build the patches for the games to run on the Xbox One, the Series X, and what have you. They never actually went back to the original developer and asked them to make some changes, for example. In this particular situation, when we talk about PlayStation Plus Premium, it's very obvious that Sony is turning to their studios that originally made these games, for example, Ben Studios with Siphon Filter, and requiring them to essentially package up the game, curate it, add trophies, and submit them back to Sony to get them certified so they can be run on this service. So I think the model itself is different. Sony seems like they're putting more emphasis on their partners, on their first-party developers to help with these games and get them in such a way where they can be curated and submitted back, and trophies can be applied to these games. Look, at the end of the day, anyone that is a developer that knows Sony development or has ever sent a game for certification to Sony knows that your game has to have trophies. Now, when it comes to trophies on emulated games, it is a pretty complex undertaking, and it's something that I've talked about in the past. Now, one of the things that Sony did recently revisit was a patent when it came to a method and apparatus for awarding trophies. And if you look at this is something that was published back in March of 2021. It's pretty old, but it's something that is still up to date. And essentially, it's just a pretty simple flowchart here. You start the game, you run the emulation, and the game is running in a loop. If there is a trigger that's detected and all the triggers are detected, then assign one or more trophies and you end. So this is a pretty high level thing. Now, what's interesting is the inventor, one of the inventors here is Timothy Lindquist. Now, Timothy Lindquist is someone that has talked about trophies, assigning trophies on emulated games in the past, specifically talking about Dark Cloud. Timothy Lindquist also was someone who was in the original MAME team many, many years ago. So this is someone that really does know their stuff when it comes to this type of thing. Now, one thing that people have brought to my attention is that adding achievements or trophies to games that run emulation is not anything new. In fact, there is a website here called RetroAchievements where there is essentially a way where you can play your old emulated games, many, many different ones for many different systems, as you can see here. And there are achievements that you can, basically get on any of these old games. And this is actually really, really cool because there's so many old games out there. So for example, if we take a look at the PlayStation, you can see that there's trophies or achievements for all these games. And you can see here there's even one for Ape Escape. If we click on that, you can see that there are trophies that have been added or achievements that have been added to Ape Escape. Now, I'm certainly not suggesting Sony has basically looked at this and decided just to copy and paste what they were doing with Siphon Filter, but the concept of adding achievements to ROMs or emulated games is nothing new. Now, one thing interesting about RetroAchievements is the way that it works is that you have to download modified emulators. So essentially what this means is you're downloading a modified version of PCSX, or you're downloading a modified version of SNES 9X that has hooks into it for these achievements to work. And that's essentially what this patent is doing, although it's doing it at the game level itself. It's pretty much the same concepts. The way that you apply trophies to an emulated game is essentially because you don't have the source code available where you can just find the piece of code that you want and kind of hook into the trophy there. You basically need to find memory locations and memory addresses and certain variables in the binary data that's running when the game is being emulated, and essentially just detect the trigger, as this patent is saying, or find the hook that you're looking for, and then apply the trophy at that point. But this is pretty exciting for fans of PlayStation. Trophies was something that was kind of hotly contested for a while. I always felt like that they were going to be in this because I felt like they have to be in here. This is a different model than, like I said, backward compatibility on Xbox. So I've always felt like Sony really had no choice, but they had to apply these trophies to these games. And I do expect to see more games have trophies. And I will say, again, I don't know 100%, but I am speculating. I think that all games that end up on the PlayStation Plus Premium service will have trophies added to them. But that does remain to be seen. I'm just speculating, but it's pretty exciting stuff. But we are going to leave it here for this episode. Let me know your thoughts about trophies on PS Plus Premium. Has it changed your mind on the service? I do know that some people are now pretty excited to get the service where they probably weren't in the past and are looking forward to, unlocking trophies on old games. That sounds pretty cool to me. And there's definitely some new incentives to play the game. And I think another really great part of this is it does give you that incentive to play these old classic games again, whereas it may not have. So, hats off to Sony. They've definitely really thinking about the right things with this service. But I will say that I will reserve judgment until this service does come out, and we will take a close look at the emulation. It's definitely something that I've really wanted to get my hands on, and you can be rest assured that I will be going through this emulation and basically A/B testing it with many different scenarios. So I can't wait to do that when the service comes out for you guys. But we are going to leave it here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to put a like on it, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.